Road Trip to History is made possible in part by the Miller Kite House Museum and the Elkton Historical Society, an organization with a common interest in the history of the Shenandoah Valley, its past, present, and future. Welcome to Road Trip to History. Today we will follow the South Fork of the Shenandoah River to a beautiful and historic place once known as Conrad's Store. We will meet some local historians and residents that will tell us about the history and charm of their hometown. Welcome to Elkton, Virginia.
Before the town became known as Elkton, it was known as Conrad's Store. John Stephen Conrad and his family migrated from Pennsylvania around 1760. Conrads, as did many German immigrants, settled in an area just east of the Massanutten Mountains and the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. One of Conrad's sons, Stephen Conrad, became a captain during the Revolutionary War. About 1812, one of Captain Conrad's three sons, George Conrad, built a store on the east side of the South Fork of the Shenandoah River near Elk Run Creek. In 1816, Conrad's Store became a post office and remained as a post office off and on until 1881 when the name was changed to Elkton. Conrad's Store still stands today as a testament to time.
The Jennings House was built in 1840 by Dr. Simeon B. Jennings along the north side of Rockingham Turnpike, which is known as Rockingham Street today. Clay that was used in the manufacturing of the bricks for this house was actually dug from a clay bank located at the back of the residence. Each of its 8 original rooms measures 18 feet square, 2 of which have marble paneled fireplace mantels. Shortly after the beginning of the Civil War, Dr. Jennings' son, William Kite Jennings, joined Company I of the 10th Virginia Volunteer Infantry, nicknamed the Riverton Invincibles. And on the evening of April 19, 1862, Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson and his army of 6,000 men marched by the Jennings House and set up camp in various locations, stretching a distance of about 4 miles to Swift Run. When Jackson's army, which had grown to about 8,000 men during the 10-day period, broke camp on the morning of April 30th and marched south, General Richard S. Ewell's divisions crossed through Swift Run Gap and actually occupied his still-burning campsites where Jackson had vacated. After the battles of Cross Keys on June the 8th and Port Republic on June the 9th of 1862, dozens of wounded Confederate and captured Union soldiers were brought to Dr. Jennings' residence, where they were tended to by the doctor and his wife Barbara. The less severely wounded men were said to have been administered to beneath a giant bur oak tree located in the front yard. This bur oak is now estimated to be over 300 years old. One of the interesting items is the tree under which the less severely injured men were treated is a parental tree to about 100 trees in Richmond, which is called Little Elkton. All of these tiny bur oaks are descendants from acorns that Virginia Tech comes and collects annually in 55-gallon drums and germinates them and sends them out to try to reclaim forest land within the inner city. Today, the Jennings House is the location of the town municipal building and the Elkton Police Department.
This house was built in 1827 by Henry Miller, Jr., the grandson of Adam Miller, the first settler in this part of the Shenandoah Valley. The house was built as a L-shaped structure. It's very unique in architecture. Henry Miller, Jr. sold the house to his daughter, Mary, and her husband John Argerbright in 1840. In 1862, on April 19, Stonewall Jackson and his troops camped in the Conrad's Store area, as it was called at that time. Jackson used this house as his headquarters, sleeping in the upper northwest room. While headquartered here, Stonewall Jackson met with several prominent Confederate generals and officers, as well as his mapmaker, Jedediah Hotchkiss, planning the early stages of the Valley Campaign. 8 days after leaving here on April 30, 1862, Jackson fought and won the Battle of McDowell, his first Confederate victory of the Shenandoah Valley. After the war, the Argabright family sold the house in 1871 to John Cover, who established a tannery a short distance east of here. In 1880, Captain Hiram Alexander Kite purchased the house from the Cover family, and the house remained in the Kite family for 104 years. In 1984, the Kite family donated the house to the town of Elkton. At that time, the Elkton Historical Society was formed, and they dubbed the house Miller Kite House, incorporating the name of the first owner and the last owner.
Henry Kidd Douglas, the youngest member of Stonewall Jackson's staff, wrote in his famous book, I Rode with Stonewall, about a meeting he had with Stonewall Jackson at his headquarters in the now Miller Kite House in Elkton, Virginia. The next morning the general sent for me. He was alone, sitting and gazing into the fire. He arose holding in his hand a dispatch which he had just received from General Ewell. The dispatch that Douglas carried that night was an order to General Ewell to put his division in readiness to begin what is now known as Stonewall Jackson's Valley Campaign.
During 1880 and 1881, a rail line was laid through Conrad's Store, Virginia by the Shenandoah Valley Railroad. 2 depots, one for passenger service and another for freight, were completed by the end of 1880. The passenger depot, located on the east side of the tracks, was named the Elkton Station by the railroad, a name chosen because of the Elk Run Creek, which flowed east to west into the South Fork of the Shenandoah River near the community. Beginning January 1st, 1881, the name Conrad's Store was officially changed to Elkton, Virginia. In 1890, after the rail line was completed, the financially strapped Shenandoah Valley Railroad fell into receivership and was sold at auction to the newly formed Norfolk and Western Railway. Around 1890, businesses started to locate in Elkton, and the railroads really helped to make Elkton a boom town. When Chesapeake and Western Railroad completed its rail line between Harrisonburg and Elkton in April of 1896, an arrangement for joint use of the Elkton passenger station was made by both rail companies. In 1907, a new Elkton passenger station was built along the west side of the tracks and put into service the first week of October. During the next 5 years, the 1907 station was altered with the addition of extra windows and a covered waiting area for those waiting to board the train. The Elkton train station stood until 1977, when it was raised. The old Chesapeake and Western trestle, which spanned the river, collapsed during the flood of November 1985 and was later replaced by Norfolk Southern Corporation, which had merged with Norfolk and Western during the early 1980s. The old 1880 freight station was torn down on November 26, 1989, due to the insurance restrictions. The old steam locomotives used a century ago have long since been replaced by the larger, more powerful diesel engines used today. A common sight, even today, is the railroad freight service passing through the town of Elkton, as it does a dozen or so times a day.
In 1870, John Cover left Gettysburg, Pennsylvania to build a new tannery, and he went to Standardsville, Virginia. But upon arriving there, he found that it was a shortage of water, and that was a major factor in building a tannery. So he heard there was a great spring near Roadside, Virginia, and he came across the mountain to investigate and found that it was what he was looking for. And he purchased, in 1871, he purchased 100 acres, which included the Miller Kite House, and he constructed the tannery. And in 1917, it went under a major expansion. And in 1918, he sold it to the Janney Burroughs Company of Pennsylvania. And they operated the tannery until 1923. At the time that they purchased the tannery, they were processing approximately 300 hides a day and employed 200 people. They operated the tannery until 1923, and at that time they then sold it to the Continental Shoe Company. And the Continental Shoe Company operated until 1925, at the time that it caught fire. And it caught fire on December the 15th, 1925, and was totally destroyed and was never reopened again.
I was born and grew up in the shadow of the Gables Hotel. It was always there. For a while in my youth, I recall it was shut down and vacant, and of course, having the imagination of children, we thought it was haunted. It was open during World War II, and many of the people who worked at Merck & Company were staying there, and they were always a problem when we had blackouts during World War II, because they would come home from work and forget and turn on their lights, so we would have to go back time and time again. In 1956, I worked there as a desk clerk and helped out Mrs. Armentrout, who ran the hotel at that time. It was always a place of fascination for us when we were growing up, because it was such a large place and we could roam around in it. And then I also recall that my parents gave me my 16th birthday party in the basement of the Gables Hotel.
Elkton's first house of worship was called the Elk Run Liberty Meeting House and was built in 1821 in the southeast corner of the present Elk Run Cemetery. From the meeting house came 3 churches. In 1896, the Methodist Church was built. In 1900, the Elkton Presbyterian Church. And in 1911, the United Brethren Church. The old meeting house was then torn down around 1912.
I was appointed postmaster December the 31st, 1949 by President Harry S. Truman. At that time, our post office was located across the railroad tracks from the railroad station. We received mail 4 times a day by train, and they had railway mail clerks at that time. And at that time also, we had quite a few people come into the post office to get their mail on general delivery, particularly children. The mail delivery was, door-to-door mail delivery began the next day on November the 12th, 1959. I numbered each house and business in town with one little map supplied by the town showing the streets and the blocks. And in some places, we even had to draw in streets. My assistant at that time was Mrs. Frances Leap. She was very artistic, and she drew larger maps. When I became postmaster, postcards were 1 cent and 1 penny, and the letter rate was 3 cents.
Well, one of my earliest recollections of my childhood was, of course, the cows roaming the common areas of the town, all around in our neighborhood. It was very common, and it continued until 1946. Of course, as a result of that, as children, we were playing out. We had to be very careful where we stepped.
As we grew up, we had always had 2 cows. And Mama would sell milk and cheese and butter. And a lot of the town folks is our customers. And the cows, we would feed them in the morning and milk them and turn them out. And we never knew where they was going until even when we called them to milk again. They traveled all over town eating on the grass. We never had to feed them during the day, just at milking time. And then in the evening we could get out and call them by their names, and they would come in. Sometimes they would be a little straggly along, but they'd come. And people never knew what it was to pin them up during the day.
Field Day was one of the big events of the year, when people would come from far and wide, even from across the mountain, when they had the usual ball game in the afternoon with the novelty stands all around during the daytime. And all kinds of sports and races and prizes were given for this, the oldest and the ugliest and the youngest and the who came the farthest, etc., etc. I remember one of the events that happened in the Golden Jubilee Parade was the appearance of Patsy Cline, who created the excitement at that moment, sitting in a convertible at the time.
During the Depression, men lost their jobs and they had to get out and hunt for work. And they rode the trains, and they were called hobos. And a lot of them were men that really wanted work. And it was, when they would travel, they didn't want to go into towns because the cops would catch them and lock them up. So they would get off the trains when the trains would slow up. And it was a lane, came from the railroad track to my home. And they would come and want something to eat. And they would offer to do work for their food. And Mom always fed them. She never turned any of them down. And a lot of times they would do hard work, cutting wood, painting and doing things for us. And they would sleep in their loft of the barn. She told them they could sleep in the barn as long as they didn't have a match or a cigarette. And they would stay and have breakfast the next morning. And they was always, all of them, good. And we didn't understand why they would be so friendly. So Mom asked him one day, she said, "How did you know that I would feed you?" And he said, "We have signs. We know who will take us in, feed us, or let us stay, and that's where we go." And he said, that's how we know that your place is welcome.
I want to talk a little bit about the Elkton Theater, the new Elkton Theater that we call it. It's really old now, and I think the last movie that I remember from the first owners was Hang 'em High. That was the last posters that was on that building when it quit with the original owners. And when they first built it, my dad helped haul seats from, I think they got the seats out of Roanoke. We used to come to the movies on Friday and Saturday, and then of course there'd be serials on. We'd have to come the next week to see how it ended, you know. I spent a lot of time there.
In 1913, my grandparents came to Elkton from Wilmington, North Carolina, and they purchased a building which later became the Elkton Restaurant. It was operated as a restaurant and also a silent theater. They had vaudeville acts come in, live acts, and to perform, as well as local talent performed on the stage there. And they operated that for 20 years or so until the talkie movies came in. The restaurant was a popular place, as I remember as a child growing up, and even before that, it was a place that the community gathered for different events. The Lions Club met there, different groups met there, and it was a meeting place. The teenagers all came to the restaurant after school and after sporting events, baseball, football, parades, whatever. My memories of it are of being a really busy, bustling place. People came from all over to eat there.
My grandfather came to Elkton in 1903 and was the first cashier of the Bank of Elkton. My grandfather passed away in the mid-40s, and so my dad, Linwood, and Randolph Flory then split up the business. Randolph took over with the lumber company. Daddy took the bottling company, and he was in charge of the bottling company up until really about the 70s when we changed the name. My brother Lynn and I changed the name from Elkton Lithia Bottling Company to the 7-Up Bottling Company of Elkton. I think the reason we did so well in Elkton was our religious philosophy and background from our grandparents, and we carried it on through the generations, and taught us to be very respectful of people and to be courteous and to work hard for whatever we did and accomplished and contributed back to the community.
We started business here in Elkton in 1949 as a Blue Ridge Radio and Television. We had the business still in operation after my son took over in 1990. Back at that time, we only had about, it wasn't but just about 4 or 5 TVs at the most. and they were just, and we had to have a large antennas, and the signal had to come from Washington, D.C. or Richmond. It was the closest it could come. And it was very poor reception. And you could, in 1950s, and then when they had the World Series on, the only time you could see the baseball from the snowflakes would be when they showed the baseball up close, because it was just that snowy, at the time.
So in 37, this apple truck came down 33, heading east, and hit the old Iron River Bridge. And the part that it hit went down in what they call the race. It was a race of water that the Elkton Milling Company used for their grinding purposes. And the truck was laying right down in the race. And the next morning I went down into that race and looked in the truck and found a dime laying in the floorboard. And I kept the dime, for I don't know where it's at now. When they were getting ready to dedicate the bridge, of course, I was 16 years old then, that was 1939. And I think it was a 1936 Chevrolet school bus. So my daddy let me drive the school bus across the bridge with Lieutenant John Hooks, a Civil War veteran that had lost a leg in the war, sitting beside of me in the school bus.
On May 17th, 1943, my mom was washing clothes and me and my brother Odell was playing outside, and the two cows had got out and they went to look for them. Well, I wanted to go too, and Mom told me, no, stay there. I snuck away and I found them up in the woods, and they told me to go back to the house. And it was a path, but I got off the path and got lost. And I kept wandering and wandering. And I just kept crying and wandering and lay down and went to sleep. And then the next thing I recall was, I don't know how much time had passed by. I kept walking, and I was barefooted, and I had sucked water off the leaves because it had rained. That's how I got water. We had a little dog that would come to me and stay with me, and he would leave. And I don't know if he stayed all night or not, but according to my parents, he did, that he would return every morning. And the only animals that I recall seeing while I was up there was a rabbit and a snake, which the snake didn't bite me. And then I recall seeing men on horseback. But I was bashful, real bashful, and I wouldn't holler to them to let them know I was there, and they could have found me earlier that I understood. So then the next thing I recall was being carried. I don't know what it was, but they said at the time there was a blanket, and begging for water. I recall that. And they said they only gave me a little water because they were scared to give me too much water, that it would make me sick, since I had been gone for 5 days and 5 nights. Then I remember getting at the hospital, which I didn't know at the time it was a hospital, and I recalled the state trooper after spending 11 days up there, which at the time I didn't know it was 11. I recalled him and a nurse bringing me home. And when I got home, it was just people everywhere wanted to see me. And I just didn't understand why, because as a child of 4 years old, I didn't know I hadn't done anything special. And I would go and hide, and Mom would have to coax me out with candy and treats and things to get me out so people could see me. That's all that I can remember about being lost and whatever.
On April 11th, 1922, there was a big fire here on the Triangle in Elkton, and all the buildings were burned from the point all the way down to the town office building, which is currently the town office building. And in its place, they rebuilt the point, and the Elkton Drug Company came into being. About 8 years ago, I moved my studio into this beautiful space, which was originally the Kite Drug Company. And about 6 months ago, we started the restoration, exposing the original tin ceilings and the original terracotta tile floors, showing the beauty of the architecture from the 20s. And it's now housing Soleil Studios, Fine Handcrafts.
Long before It Takes a Village became a book title and a cliche, Elkton was the village that helped us all grow up. We grew up in the village of our neighborhood, our school, our church, and people look after us all over the village. And when we did something worthwhile, we were praised for it, and if we stepped out of line, we heard about that too. So Elkton really was a village and gave us the basic values that I think all of us carry with us throughout our lives, no matter where we live. Elkton gives us roots.
But even now, about twice a year, 6 or 7 of us get together from Richmond, Chester, Shenandoah, Elkton, Harrisonburg, and we spend a day reminiscing, talking about the times and the life we shared, living in the greatest small town in the USA, Elkton, Virginia.
For more information on Road Trip to History, visit us at roadtriptohistory.com. For more information on the Shenandoah Valley, visit us at shenandoahvalley.com.